Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Filzanes, your host, and thank you for downloading today's show. Today we're going to talk about how your name exposes you. Sharón LynnWyeth is a fascinating person. When I first met her, literally I was like, you're booked, and I want you on the show, because she's got this gift, and people were questioning how she had this gift, and I don't know how she got it, but she's got it, and it's something that she teaches people so you can learn it. So as you start to listen to today's show, a lot of it's going to be me, like reading me and people in my life and things like that, but it's just to give you an overview of what she could do for you, and you're welcome to buy her book and learn from her. So I'm really looking forward to sharing her with you. But before we get to today's episode, I do want to remind you that we are getting closer and closer to the next big step. And one of the things I wanted to make sure everybody understood is that while the Releasing What Weighs You Down event that we did in January was a success, but as we talked about last week in Adam's show, the idea of community, and I know I've gone on about it a couple times, but in today's world where we're behind a computer, I'm behind a monitor with a headset on, talking into a mic, and you're listening to me in your car or on the treadmill or walking down the street or while you're washing dishes, and we feel somewhat connected, but we don't. There's a way for us to take it further and to actually make these life shifts. What I've noticed about, and what I love about a lot of you that are millennials, as an older adult, many people are sort of down on millennials because they have these preconceived notions about laziness and entitlement and things like that. And I've never once subscribed to that, because I know so many of you who are around your 25, 26, 22, even a little bit younger. I have just found the most amount of willingness to change and grow and not hold on to things. And you guys are up to speed because you're younger and you come in a little bit faster thinking and a little bit more progressive than the people that I necessarily work with on a regular basis on the other side, towards the older side when it comes to fitness and exercise, because they want to lose weight, they've gone through menopause, they're concerned about their joints, and now they're freaking out and they want to figure out how to build bone, build muscle, increase their metabolism, lose weight, and make the rest of their time here the best it can be. Well, while I enjoy working with those people too, I really, really, really love you millennials for the reason of that emotional, spiritual integration, which is what this work that I'm doing is all about. So if you feel at all like you want to have that connection, you recognize that maybe you're on your phone too much, you're on your digital device, you feel lonely, that's really what it's going to come down to. Do you feel alone in any way? Alone in your relationship? Alone because you don't have a relationship? Alone because no one else thinks like you? Alone because you don't know where to go to help get the things that you need to get and to feel that human connection? Do you feel depressed? If you feel any of the things that I just mentioned, you have to make it to the event. This doesn't become about a playtime. This is about longevity and dedication and reverence to the life you're creating for yourself. So as a business owner, one of my favorite things to do is to mastermind. And half the time, I don't really care even who it's with. I have had a friend who wanted to talk with me and I wanted to talk with her, and she needed my help with something. And then I thought, you know what, I'm gonna use this time and space to help myself as well. So while she didn't have the answers to the questions that I had, because what I was talking about was way over her head in many different ways, creating this space, creating the out loud thinking about it strategy allowed me to tap into my subconscious, my internal voices, and possibly even connect on a higher level to any other channeled messages or inspiration that I was getting in order to answer my own question. See, a lot of times we think if I don't have a problem, or if I don't think you can answer the problem, or if you as a group are not the right fit for me, let's say, to work something out. Sometimes that's very true. But how many times do you actually take the act of taking the time? When you take the time and take the space and schedule it, magic happens, I promise you. Even when I go to these podcasting conferences, I've been named an icon of influence by Steve Olsher and the New Media Summit, and I'll be heading back to Austin in September for my third New Media Summit conference. And if any of you want to be on a podcast, PM me and I'll tell you how you can come to the event. But New Media Summit, while it's not a business deal for me, business happens, business ideas happen, creation happens, and other things happen that I'll share with you as we get a little closer. to the middle and end of July. But just keep in mind, taking space is critical to allow and be in receiving mode for the answers, the inspiration, and the connections that you're seeking. Okay? All right. So go to jjfilzanes.com/next big step. You can get the virtual ticket. You can do it from your home. It is not a live stream. And along with that, you're going to get 3 months of accountability. So what that means is we'll come together as a group for 3 months after that via virtually somehow, and have a coaching session so that everyone is staying on point with what the transitions that they're making, what goals they have, what things they learn to keep it going, to keep that momentum going. So go to jjfilzanes.com/next big step. Today's show, how your name exposes you. Sharón LynnWyeth. Do you rely on first impressions? A person's name reveals more. Sharón LynnWyeth is a master at discerning behaviors characteristics from a name utilizing Neimology Science. Sharón assists businesses improve profitability through improved employee selection, assists lawyers prepare winning strategies, and assists people in improving their communication with others. Sharón developed Neimology Science after 15 years of research, followed by 3 years of field testing in over 70 countries. For 37 years, Sharón has engaged audiences internationally. Welcome to the show, Sharón.
So nice to be here, JJ. Looking forward to this.
When I first met you at the first New Media Summit in September of 2017, I remember having a full-on conversation with you about so many things after your pitch. In fact, I think you were the first person who I said you were booked. And here we are, how many months later, and finally getting you on the show. So I apologize about that. I wasn't really recording back then, but I knew I wanted to have you on the show because what you do is so unique. So everyone who's listening, I really want you to pay attention. You're going to take notes about Sharón's website and email address, because I promise by the end of the show, you're going to want to have a reading with her. There's no doubt in my mind that you're going to want to have it because it's something so unique that I've actually never encountered until I met her last year. I've done astrology readings, numerology readings. I've done all kinds of feng shui things, right? But never in my life have I heard of anyone who does Neimology. So Sharón, tell us about Neimology.
Neimology is the study of the placement of the letters in a name and what they reveal about you. And so there's very little that your birth name doesn't say about you. And the first name is always, the essence of who you are. Your middle name is where you go when you're under stress. And if you believe in reincarnation, it's because it represents your last life and what you did really well for a whole lifetime. And that's why you head toward the middle name when you're under stress. And then your last name represents your environment. So we take the input from the middle name and we then drop the first name and the middle name into the last name. And that tells us all about you and answers all kinds of questions.
So when I heard this pitch, obviously I was intrigued and immediately said she was booked. And we also talked about names in my life and we had a full-on conversation. So I know, and I remember some of the things that you had said, but for the listeners, if you wouldn't mind reading my name and telling them so that they could get an understanding of what, and prior to this conversation, you and I have not had any other conversations other than the first time at New Media Summit for a short period of time. And then we did talk for another short period of time at this last New Media Summit, but there hasn't been some major analysis or study about my personality or anything like that. She knows nothing else about me. She doesn't have anything about my astrology. She doesn't have anything about my birth time or place or personality. I've taken no quizzes, nothing. It's just my name. Just so everyone understands. But I'd love if you could share with everyone listening on my tribe what my name means.
Okay, as long as everybody understands, I can literally talk for an hour on somebody's name because there's so much details there. So I'm just going to give you a very simplistic summary.
Perfect.
Okay? So your name indicates that you're absolutely brilliant, that you're highly intuitive, that at one time you may not have been comfortable with your intuition, so you had to grow into accepting the fact that you were very intuitive, that you just download things, so you just know things. Your name also indicates that everybody loves to come and dump their problems on you because you generally give very good advice. You want to make the world a more beautiful place, so you're one of those people that even if a picture's crooked on the wall, you walk by and straighten it out, and that you're always noticing how people are dressed and what things are looking like. because your eye is always saying, oh, this could make it better, or that would look better that way, or wow, doesn't that one look good? And it's just like an innate thing for you, because you're always looking at how can we make the world look like a more beautiful place and be a more beautiful place. You have a fabulous memory according to your name, and you have your own organizational style. It doesn't mean that anybody else needs to know how to follow it, but you certainly can put your hand on what you need and when you need it. You have a great imagination, very independent, can see things from other people's points of view, even when you disagree with them. You would be a rebel in a way that you don't want anybody to tell you what the truth is. You want to figure it out for yourself, and truth is just primo for you. And especially the older you get, the more important people being honest with you is. And that if they are not honest with you, there's a part of you that just says, this one doesn't have much value. I don't want to have to deal with them anymore than I have to. You're very tactile in your intake. So the feel of stuff, the texture of things, the color of things is all highly important to you. You have learned over time to have very good discernment. I'm always concerned with people that don't have any discerning letters in their name, because I think, oh my gosh, what do those people do? They're so gullible. But you over time have very good discernment. And you have a combination in your name that I always say with reincarnation, if I've got to come again, which probably, that's the combination I want in my name, because that to me is one of the very best that's out there. And it literally means you can lead and nurture others and not want to control anybody. And you just want to say, hey, come on, guys, let's do what's right. So that's a lot of what's in your name.
So that was awesome. And I know that was just a very small part of what you would do with somebody in a reading. So let's say that they're doing a reading and they're coming to learn and have reflected back to them the information you see in their name. Now, what are some of the reasons people come, and how do you help them with this?
First of all, it literally centers in on, here are your gifts, and this is what you came to learn. This is your purpose in life. I mean, the number of people who aren't really sure on why they're here or how to utilize their gifts. And sometimes it shows up in the name that they believe that if they have a gift, everybody can do that. So they don't realize that everybody here is unique, and how they're uniquely like a snowflake that's different than everybody else. And so setting them free to really get to know and hone in on who they are and why they're here helps a lot of people. The other things we do is we look at going forward. What years of your life are you going to be focused on what as you're learning? And I usually start back to show them that the system works. And then we go forward. So what are we still learning? Where is our focus for what years of our life? Another thing that we do is we compare your name with other people's names in your life. How can you improve those relationships? What needs to shift? Whose responsibility is it for the relationship to go forward? And how can we reword things so that we can get along and still be us? Because I think all of us really need to present who we are. And I also believe that you can say anything you want to, as long as you have some tact and you know the right words that other person can hear, so that you're not putting them on the defense when you're talking with them. For businesses, I help them. I constantly get from the businesses I have a list of, this is the qualifications or the job description. Here's the names of our candidates. Who should we be hiring? And so I'll go through and say, I'm ranking the top 2. And then sometimes I'll say, if these guys work for you, this is what they're missing, why I didn't want them in your job. But if you train them ahead of time, they would be, coming up the ladder. And other ones like, don't bother. And every once in a while I'll say to a company, scratch all of this, start again. You may want to rewrite the ad or something to pull in a different type of person for your job. I work with lawyers picking juries, and how do you present a case so that you're pinging the judge and also representing the client very well, so they know you're doing your best. In individual relationships and families, it's really nice to know how someone works, operates, what pings them, what makes them hurt, what saddens them versus what thrills them, and what an individual's needs are, so that if you want a good relationship and you can help meet that need, and we all have some, that it helps, bring people closer together. Because I keep thinking that if we could get along with each other, especially family, then cities could get along with cities, and states with states, and countries with countries, and maybe we'd actually end up eventually having world peace.
Well, that's a lovely thought, and I agree. Now, I have lots of my own personal and business questions, but before I just decide to take up this whole session about me, I would like to share your story and how you got into this. I mean, can anybody learn how to do this? Because I've never heard about it before you.
Yes, I developed it. It took me 15 years of trial and error, and then I tested it in 72 countries, which took me 3 years to perfect it. And I kept thinking, okay, if I'm off, if I'm wrong, somebody will just say, oh, you're just full of it and whatever. But everybody always said, where can I get more information? So after I did that, I came back, and it took me 2.5 years to write the first book, Know the Name, Know the Person, because I rewrote it so many times, taking in everybody's intake, which is probably why it won an award for good writing or excellence in writing. And yes, anybody can learn it. I give classes, and in 15 hours, you can learn level 1. And then in 36 hours, it takes you to learn level 2, which is all the subtleties. But all the obvious things that are sitting there in a name only take 15 hours to learn, which I think is kind of ironic because it took me 15 years to develop.
Wow. So here we go. There's going to be, I think you need your own school and university besides just doing the individual sessions. That would be really cool. I'm sure there are so many people, especially any right brainers, who feel like they want to be helping and healing others, and maybe massage isn't their way or astrology isn't their way. This is definitely falls in that category of how can you help others. So
and it's much faster to learn. And the accuracy rate is so high right from the very beginning. I mean, that's what's really nice.
And let's talk about how you got into this and why you got into this. How did you develop this? Why?
In my 7th year of teaching, I was sitting down. They just gave me my 150 student names for the year. And I was, doing the random seating chart. But my brain wasn't doing random. It was saying, oh, don't put Julie next to Joshua because together they're going to be clowns. And Stephanie's going to be stubborn, so put her in one seat where you don't have to move her. And Derek's going to need extra help, so seat him up close. And it didn't dawn on me until I started with my 4th class with the names that all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, I don't know these kids yet. But my brain's doing the same thing that it does once I do know my children. And so curiosity got the best of me. And so I went and wrote down what my brain was telling me about every single child. And I decided I want to get to know the kids for who they were, put that list aside. And when I looked at it during winter break 3 months later, I was astonished at its accuracy. And I said, okay, my brain is thoroughly trained in patterns because I'm a math major and I have my master's. And I said, okay, so it's picked up some kind of pattern. How do I make my subconscious patterning become conscious? And that's how it started.
Are you an air sign?
I am an air sign.
Yes. Which are you? I don't remember which air sign. Aquarius?
I'm a Libra by Western astrology, and by Vedic astrology, I'm a Virgo, which are those anal people. And if you look at Western astrology, I have, there's 10 major signs, and 9 of them are in 3 houses.
It's the air part. It's that patterning. I just did a reading. I just did a reading for somebody who had a lot of air, and that's definitely one of the traits, is being able to see those patterns over and over again and pick them out and make sense of them. And so that's just where I would attach my astrology to that. So that's very cool.
Right. Well, I have a stellium in air, or in Libra.
Well, there we go. Okay. and had I not remembered some of that, I would have remembered that now based on all the readings I've done recently of people who are air signs. So that definitely fits. Okay. Now, so you can help anybody with anything pretty much. And that's unfortunately a really broad thing to say to people, which is why I wanted you to list it out. But when I was thinking about what we were going to share today and what names I wanted you to take a look at, there were some personal ones and there were some business ones. And so I'd love to, do I need to tell you who and like which category they fit in, or
just so that I know how to address it?
Yeah.
Because you don't talk about your child the same way you talk about your boss. And
right.
What's really interesting in a name is, like, I just did a reading this morning that almost had me in tears after I got off the phone. And it was because in her name, it so showed an abusive childhood, and to be able to see that and connect with her, and then to be able to come through with compassion to understanding and to praise her on how well she's healing along her road, and look at how far she's come compared to what she was in. And so many times when I do a full reading for somebody, it's like imagining that you just now have a new BFF that you feel like you've known your entire life, because somebody can so well understand you and see what you've gone through. And you don't even have to have all the words, from them knowing that you can see that and understand it, and that they don't have to find words to explain themselves. I think it's a very freeing experience. Okay, so who are we going to start with?
Let's start. Well, there's a mixture of business and personal, but I kind of want to start with the business. And I'm looking for I'm not going to, I'll give you the setup afterwards because I want people to because I've not ever shared any of this before. And these names are people that I either have worked with or might work with. And I've had either no experience with or a not great experience with. And so I wanted to determine who was the better choice and who
So
in the name.
since you just typed me the list of names. If you only want to use the first name, that's fine with me. Since
That would be great. Yes, that would be great. So let's start with Evan.
Okay. So Evan is a feeler, just like you're a feeler. Okay. So you guys come from the heart. He's very charismatic. He wants to make the world a better place. He does not want to do any more work than he has to do. So any work that he can get somebody else to do, he's really happy with. He's also wanting to make the world a more beautiful place. He can sometimes have clutter. He has a very good memory. He can drive you nuts with the minutia. He has fairness issues, but he has a tendency to make things a little bit harder than they have to be, and yet he really wants to be known for his work. Does that help you?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we look at that in terms of like trust and trust?
He does not have anything in his name that says he's dishonest.
Okay.
Okay. Because it would show up like if you're dishonest around money or if you're dishonest, around possessions or whatever. He does not have any of the warning bell letters in his name that would say he's dishonest.
Okay. Let's move to Justin.
Okay. Justin's a storyteller. He's very stubborn in some ways, very persistent to get things done, highly independent, just as genius as you are. He has a great sense of humor. He likes to play when he works. If work's not fun, he doesn't want to do it. He can drive you nuts with the minutia. When he really gets into something, he's very persistent until it gets done. But if he's not interested, good luck in getting him to do it. He also tends to bring people in that make things harder than they have to be. And he doesn't always have the confidence in himself that he can do what he knows he can do. In other words, he's brilliant and doesn't trust it.
Okay. What about trust in this particular case?
Okay. When I'm looking at his name, he likes attention. He likes other people to notice him, and he likes to get the kudos for it. So he can make up stuff. Okay. He can exaggerate if that's a form of dishonesty. If you're in an entertainment business, sometimes you want somebody who's able to do that. He also has in his name that he could take credit for something that somebody else did around him.
Okay. Well, that was very helpful and useful for me. And some of the other names were just people who are important to me. So it's all positive to me. I guess if there's anything that I would need to know, then that would be great. But otherwise, they're just important people in my life that I would love to hear since you have the names and I don't have to say the whole thing. So let's start with Jeannie.
Okay. So Jeannie and you have a lot in common. Only where you're very comfortable coming from the heart and coming from compassion, she goes back and forth between the heart and the brain. And it's like sometimes there's internal conflict because like which one does she trust if they don't agree with each other? Does she go with what her heart's telling her? Does she go with what her head's telling her? And her name tells me she should always trust her heart over her head. Now, that's not true for everybody, but it's definitely true in her name. She has enough in common with you, like the organizational skills. She has generosity of heart. She has a very good memory. She's intuitive. She's a playful person. She's a lot of fun. You guys laugh together. There's a lot of camaraderie. It's like this is your twin sister from born of different mothers type of thing with her name and your name. Some of what you're learning in your lifetime as what she's bringing into hers because she wants to learn it also. So there's just a lot of compatibility. I would not be surprised if you guys were BFFs.
Okay. She's like another mother to me.
Okay.
So yes. Lisa.
Okay. Lisa is very inclusive. Her friends, she makes them into family. She's constantly learning. She's highly likable, but she's not going to change who she is to get like. This lady has a lot of self-confidence. She is really interesting, I would think, to be able to watch her handle conflict because I think she has her own style and her own way of doing it, and yet it's smooth. Like she can conflict doesn't bother her. It just rolls off like, water off a duck's back. She always wants to be included. If you're buying her a gift of any sort, she wants something off her list. She does not want you to get creative. She could care less how much it costs. It's just, did you bother to ask her what she wanted? And then did you take your own time to get her exactly what she said she wanted? That's what's really important to her. And the other thing that's important to her is that she's always included. So let's say you guys are all going bowling and she doesn't like to bowl. She still wants to be asked every time, do you want to go bowling with us? Just so she has the right to say no, but she knows that she was included. Her really biggest challenge in her name is that some of the people she attracts into her life are just jerks. So she doesn't have discernment very well. She can be fooled sometimes, even though she's very self-confident and very sharp. And so she's really relying on you and others that have discernment around her to help her see people clearly.
Interesting. Okay, one more. Doug.
Okay. This guy would just be an absolute sweetheart. He wants to make the world a better place. He wants to help people gain more self-confidence, especially when they don't believe in themselves. By the way, he brings people around him, or he could be reflecting it for them, knee injuries and his, where he has to watch his knees. But he's the one that's nurturing and taking care of everybody around. He has a lot of love for everybody. I wouldn't be surprised if he has pets, because all that extra love's got to go somewhere. He loves to make fun and have fun. I would be concerned, he's here for a factor of change. I would be concerned that to make sure he doesn't get addicted to something. He's got addiction as a challenge in his name. So some people just abstained from wherever their addictions would have gone and able to control it, and others have to go through an addiction to learn how to control addiction. So that's his biggest challenge in his name. But he would be one sharp guy. He has a clutter issue, but clutter helps his brain get going. It's like if there's clutter, it's like the key to the ignition, and it starts the brain. And if everything's too clean and neat around him, then he finds it harder to get going in the morning because there's nothing, there's no key to start the engine. But this guy would just be fun and charming and just wonderful.
Great. Okay, so what I just had Sharón do was go through a bunch of people who I have in my life, and some of them are work and some of them are personal. And I wanted to, without setting the stage, that way, you guys didn't know any different. I've got especially two people that I'm having a question of whether to work with or to do something about. And you pretty much nailed it for the one person I've had an experience with that I probably am trying to end that relationship. And I didn't want to tell you which one it was. So that way, I'd get obviously the honest reading. And so I really find the value, and I'm going to keep looking at other aspects as well, like astrology things. I've taken down people's charts. And so I'm going to sort of do that, because what happens is, when we meet people, for me anyway, there's several layers. And I think this Neimology does what I can't do. I can do someone's chart and I can spend the time doing that, and that might be able to give me some information, but it's going to take a little while, and it isn't going to be as fast as learning, like you said. I mean, it's fast for me to do a chart online, but it's fast for me to call you if I'm in a situation, because I do believe in the Neimology plus the intuition part, right? There's that part of me that when I got into a working relationship with this person, I wasn't sure at first. My instinct said no. I overrode it because I had other things I wanted to get out of it. And I was open to it after I said, you know what, just hear it out and see if it's okay. And then as I continued down that path, I kind of made peace with it, but it wasn't a gut check, instant, aligned decision. It was something that kind of wore me down over time. And I thought, well, that sounds like the right idea, but it took a long time. And I think, I don't know about you, but we're trying to get to the place where we have sort of that education plus instinct that says a very, very high yes, or a maybe not, back away. Is that
right? Well, and there's some, like in the name, one of the names that you gave me, I would double check everything he told me to see if he was telling me the truth.
Who's that?
And that's in Justin's name. And I would just double check everything, because sometimes he is, and sometimes got a good imagination there. I mean, and when I get into a real reading and I'm comparing, and when you say, okay, this is what I want to know about somebody, it's like the letters jump off the page, because there's different combinations that mean different things. And I think that's always really important to see. I think it's funny. I had somebody write me just the other day and say, I'd really like to meet you. And I know that LinkedIn isn't a dating site, but, and this whole thing. And I wrote back and I said, I appreciate the compliment, but obviously you didn't read what I do, because I do name readings, and I really politely want to say no, thank you. I said, you have challenges in your name that personally, and where I'm at in my life, I don't want to have to deal with.
Wow.
I thought, okay, there's no waste of time. There's no, anything, but there's 4 different ways that different kinds of temper show up, and he had 3 of them in his name. And I thought, yeah, right. Not happening for me. Thank you.
So useful. Had I known you or met you prior to making this deal that I did in May, I made the deal in March of 2017, but had I known you, this is why I'm really glad, because I'm about to decide on making another deal. And all of a sudden, because I've done this once wrong, where I'm like, oh, I didn't listen to myself, and I really need another checklist. I need a couple other ways to gauge and vet somebody, and I need other intuitive people to help me with this, because I don't want to go through this again. And so it was really perfect that we were having this recording today, because I started out thinking, I trust this all feels good. And then I went, stop, you did this before, and the other one didn't work out. And now it's going to cause me a little bit of headache, and it's going to be harder to get out of. And it's less money and less of a headache than the one I'm about to get into. And so I thought, oh, okay, I need to treat this differently. And so I can definitely see how valuable that is for businesses. And whether you're, let's say someone's listening to this and they really don't believe you yet, because they don't know me and everybody that I named on that list, or they just think this is, foo-foo, whatever, woo-woo stuff. Obviously, I'm going to say, have a conversation, have a session with Sharón, because if she does nail your name, the beauty and the power in this, in business, in dating, in relationships, is in child raising. I'm sure there's probably so much you could help somebody uncover if they don't understand about their child. Yes?
Yes, and where the child's gifts are and things to be aware of. For an example, it shows up in a child's name if they're going to experiment sexually early. And if they are, don't you want to teach them about sex earlier so they're getting it from you and not from the street? I mean, all of that will show up in a name, and where to guide them. Like, I had the beauty of starting this when my kids were little. And so in my son's name, he was all about computers. So he was literally in kindergarten, and I started enrolling him in computer classes. And today, I mean, he gets sent all over the world to fix people's high-end computers and big companies' computers and whatnot, and he just loves it. On the other hand, when I looked at my daughter's name, it said science and it said art. So I put her in art classes, and I really stressed that, honey, when you're coming home from school, I can help you in any subject, but if it's science, you better get it from the teacher, and I'll come get you after school. You go in and get extra help. And so she would come home and say, here, Mom, let me teach you the science, since that's the only subject you don't know. But I did it all on purpose because I wanted her to see the importance of science and how I felt a little bit shortchanged, until she got in college and was taking a chemistry class. And they asked her some question, the teacher asked some question, and so she answered it. So she called me up and she said, Mom, you were teaching us chemistry and science all the way along. You just didn't call us that. You were just fooling us the whole time.
You were caught.
You were caught. But in the meantime, it was really great, because I was able to then guide them and provide extra things in the interests of where their interests would lie. How many times do we give our kids extra classes or sports or whatever, and it's not them, and they hate it, even though you want them to have the experience and try things? Why not guide them right into where their interests already are, and then they realize why everything else is also important and how it fits in.
Definitely recommend anyone having any kind of struggle with your children, or even just want to know how to help them best, have a session and do a reading on their names, so that you can be the best parent you could be for your child. Because there's so many people that project onto their children what they think is best for them, and they're just doing it based on their own unfulfilled desires and accomplishments, and it has nothing to do with the child, which of course is going to end up being a train wreck in the future with your relationship. So whether it be the child takes it internally and becomes an addict because you didn't approve of them, or they didn't feel like they were seen or heard by you, just for sure, make sure you reach out. It's Sharón's website is knowthename.com. And her email address is Neimology, but it's Neim. So Neimology, Neimology @gmail.com. And I'll give that again at the end here, because I'm just, the importance and the power in this is just really cool. And I'm just trying to think of anything else I want to ask you about my own stuff, because I just asked a couple things about that. I guess when it comes to the names, can you tell, like in astrology, sometimes people do future telling, and I'm never a big fan of using it for that, because I don't understand all of the houses. I only use astrology to talk about energetic blueprints of understanding and interpretation, so people can understand their energy. So for instance, you being a Libra in Western astrology and what that might mean for me or for you in relationship and vice versa, and how you may look at the world and see the world and interpret the world. So let's talk about Neimology. Can you future tell?
You can tell where the focus is every year. What my focus is this year, it goes from birthday to birthday. And so what your focus is for the year absolutely shows up in a name. And how many years you're going to have that same focus, whether you're going to spend 1 year doing it or 9 years doing it or somewhere in between. And literally then how to go about it and what your name says you wanted to gain from it. And so why you're focused on that. And it literally gives you that timeline. Now, if you do the advanced Neimology, you can actually get it down to the months. But right now in both level 1 and level 2, I teach immediately for you how to be able to do it, even in level 1, in that first 15 hours, how you can focus in on the year. What is this year about? What's next year about? What was last year about? Whatever, the whole timeline for the lifetime. But I don't teach yet how to do the months.
Okay. Can we do a one for me that's this year and maybe next year?
It's really hard to do. Like, how fast I do everything else? This one takes me a while. So as we're working on other things, I'll be working on that in the background.
Okay, no worries. I just wondered, since I asked about the future, I just wondered if it was something that we could do, because my life has been rapidly shifting and changing. And so I just wanted to see if there was anything in my name that showed that. In fact, I would say what would be interesting is to look at, and I've done it with the tarot deck and the tarot years with 2017, 2018. I haven't looked ahead yet to see what 2019 is going to bring, but I thought I could compare what I kind of already have read and know a little bit with what you do and with Neimology. So obviously we have it down for business. So people that are in businesses, I think that if you're the person who wants to double, triple, quadruple check your work, that this is something to consider adding into that, especially because it couldn't hurt. It's going to either tell you something you haven't thought of before, something you don't know, or it could be a real deal breaker for a person or a contract or something. I definitely am now. I've been burned enough with this one relationship that I am going to be very careful in the future and use many different ways of vetting what's happening.
So right now and for 2 more years, okay, you asked about what are you focusing on now? Okay, you are working on how do I trust my intuition and do what I think is right versus what others are teaching me is right, have said that it was right. Where are you going into your own trust within yourself that you really do know best in your own business versus all what your advisors are telling you? And right now you're focused through until your 45th birthday on other people's trust and what's the real truth and what's underneath what we're being told and what's really the truth that's going on. It's like getting your inner rebelliousness going to say, wait, I'm just not going to buy that hook, line, and sinker because you told me. It's like, where's my own truth meter? And so right now you're really working on truth and discernment. Then you're working on accumulating more knowledge. And you'll be working for 1 year on how much more knowledge do I need? What else do I need to learn? And then you're going to go into nurturing just a huge amount of people and making sure that everybody's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. And tell me, how often do you use Neimology for yourself? Is it every time, no matter who it is, no matter who's interviewing you, or obviously on LinkedIn or on dating sites? How else do you use it?
Well, I'm not on dating sites, but I use it habitually now every time I'm introduced to somebody. And there's sometimes I'm introduced to somebody and I'll just look at them and say, how do you spell that? And literally as they're spelling their name, I'm analyzing it. Because I don't need a birth date or a time or a place or a handwriting sample or, I don't need any of that cooperation. So as they're spelling their name, I'm analyzing it. And I'm really looking at how can I best assist this person? And do we have something in common? How can we help each other? Because I'm analyzing that name, or I'm noticing what the challenges are going to be between my personality and this other person's personality and making a decision, is it going to be worth it? For where we're going to butt heads. And because I've learned enough from Neimology Science over the years, it's like I know where to back down or where to sidestep. Because I think if not, we're going to be like 2 bulls in a china shop, and everybody has that with somebody somewhere. And so I'm very peaceful oriented. I really think it's important for all of us to find common ground. And so it's easier for me knowing where their issues are, how to find common ground so I'm not pushing buttons.
Well, as a Libra, you're about balance. So that makes sense. You're trying to balance it all the time. How do we balance? How do we balance what's going on here? Yeah. So tell me about your book. When reading your book, can someone start to learn sort of anything basic or learn anything about themselves in your book?
In Know the Name, Know the Person, it's a bestseller on Amazon, which I'm really pleased it got there all by itself without me doing anything. And the whole system is there. The entire system, what I teach in both level 1 and level 2. The entire thing's there. I didn't leave anything out. So many people told me, oh, you should have broken it down, or you should have given them some of it so they had to come to you. And I said, no, it's more important that people get this skill. And if you want to teach yourself, great. It's literally all in that book. And it's Know the Name, Know the Person, because the person stands for personality. So you can decipher anybody's personality by reading the book. I jokingly say skip the middle school years, chapter 6, 7, and 8, because those are all the subtleties and the nuances. And you can get bogged down in there, and then you get kind of go like, oh my gosh, I'm on overwhelm. So I always say use those chapters as reference material. So read through chapter 5, start on chapter 9 again and keep reading. And then as you're really doing a name, go back and just look up your combos that are in those 3 chapters. And then the second book is Know the Name, Know the Spirit. And that's all about your purpose. Why are you here? So the first book teaches the whole system. But the second book is like a lookup book. I'm looking up, my first letter is what, and I look that up. And then my second letter is what, and I look that up. And my first vowel is what, and I look that up. So it's literally written differently, like a lookup. What's my purpose? Why am I here? What did I come to share that I do well? And what did I come to learn? What was really important for the soul? And if the soul conflicts with the personality, how do I make those two merge and be okay? So that's the second book. And then the third book's coming out this December, and it's going to be called Know the Name, Know the Health, because people's health predispositions are sitting there in the name. So if you know ahead of time you're going to have knee challenges, like for example, anybody that has an ND in their name, like a Linda, anytime there's an ND combination in the name, it indicates at some time in the life you've got to watch those knees. And so if you know that, why not learn how to get in and out of a car so you're not straining or pulling on the knees, so that you sit down, you take 2 legs in at once, and when you're getting out, you put your 2 legs out and you stand up with 2 legs at one time instead of doing 1 leg, so that you're not ever twisting or putting undue pressure on that knee. And so there's different combinations that can lead to different injuries or illnesses that show up in a name. So that book's coming out in December.
Well, let's definitely do another show on that. And if you'd be happy to send me a galley copy or a PDF of it ahead of time, that would be awesome. Because obviously with what I do with people, having that kind of information would help them feel a little more validated in what either they're going through or how to proactively avoid or minimize the effects of that. So that would be awesome. And I'd love to have you back on to help promote that book. Can everybody get both of your other books? I know you can get them on Amazon, but can you get there through your website?
You can get them through my website. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them on BookBaby. You can get them in Barnes and Nobles. They're carried in some of the Barnes and Nobles, not all of them. So if they're not, they can order it for you. I mean, you can get it just about anywhere. There's a lot of specialty little cute shops that order my books. So I would just say go where you like books and order it.
Well, I want to send everybody to the same site. That's why I'm asking. If you go to knowthename.com, I want everybody to be able to find you more easily than to send them to 3 different places. So if you can get the books there, knowthename.com will get you more information. And then tell me a little bit about the consultation. How long is it? How much is it? How do you do it?
Okay, so I ask everybody ahead of time for your parents' birth names, and then your birth name and all names you've used, including nicknames from the birth name in chronological order all the way to the current name. And then I say, ask any questions. If you could ask any question of the universe that you've ever wanted to know, like if you were speaking directly to God, because I think the language is in the name, what do you want to know? And so write me those questions. And the reason I do that is because some of them take a little longer to find the answer, just like your timing thing, than just quick and fast. And then I say, and then send me any names that you want me to compare with and their relationship to you. Is this a child? Is this a friend? Is this a boss? And that's all I need is the relationship. So I know what angle I'm looking at. And people send that to me ahead of time because I want to be able to take the time that they choose to work with me just to keep giving as much information as possible and not having to do any think time. Okay. You don't want to pay for my think time during your time with me. So I work in half-hour segments. So a half hour is $85 and you get a recording that is both emailed and snail mailed to you. And then an hour's 150, and an hour and a half is 210.
Perfect. And is it done? I see you're recording it. Is it done on Zoom or is it just audio only?
It's just audio only. A lot of times, I mean, I could be in jeans or rags, or I could be in the middle of gardening and come in and do a reading. So no, we don't do any pictures. Besides that, I noticed that we get better recordings when we're doing just the audio. And I call someone using my equipment, which is all fancy. And so I always ask them, do you want me to call you on Skype, on your cell, on your home? However they want to be notified or called is good, and it'll work. And then they get a really nice recording sent to them. And then after I've emailed it to them, and then after I've put it on a disc, or actually my assistant Grace does all of that for me, she's wonderful. And after it gets mailed out to them, then we literally delete it from the computer so that the person that we just had a reading for has their privacy.
Okay, good to know. Good to know you also do phone for lots of people who don't do the computer, even though some people are listening to this on a podcast on their phone, and they figured out how to download that. A lot of people aren't Zoom users or Skype users, so the phone is still going to be the best way for them. So great to hear that you do that as well. Sharón, this has been so fascinating, and I'd love to keep working with you. So I think what I'll do is I'll sign up for a session, and I'll pre-think all the questions that I have, so you can have plenty of time to get all the information for me. And I would definitely recommend for anyone else that is at all intrigued about themselves, especially in the areas of life purpose and passion and gifts, and uncovering any struggles that you may have, is definitely worth at least starting with a 30-minute consultation reading with her. That's super easy, but of course there's a 60 and the 90, but just get started and get some information, and go to knowthename.com, or you can email her at Neimology. Remember, the name is spelled differently. It's NEIMOLOGY @gmail.com. And Sharón, this has been amazing. You're such a gift.
Oh, JJ, this has been so pleasant. Thank you so much. You know, I love sharing this because to me, it's just a tool that is so useful. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful to know when you're meeting somebody if they're going to want to scam you or not, or if they're honest with money or not? Or
yes.
Wouldn't that just in itself to go, hey, can I trust this person or not? You can tell right off the bat by their name.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and let's have you back when your next book is out.
Okay, sounds like a deal.